You walk into a room and think you're just there. You say hi, maybe smile, sit down, scroll your phone, or glance around to see who's watching. It feels harmless, ordinary, forgettable. But in that first minute, more has been decided about you than you realize. Your place in the room. How much respect you'll get. Whether you'll be listened to, ignored, or quietly tested. And here's the part no one tells you. By the time you start thinking about how you're coming across, most people have already felt what to do with you. They don't consciously know it. You don't consciously notice it. But it happens fast. This is the first law of social influence. People respond emotionally before they think logically. An emotional response is programmable. Imagine a quiet study lit only by a single dim candle. Stone walls, a wooden table, and an old manuscript lying open. Niccolo Machiavelli sits there in the half-dark, not as a saint, not as a demon, but as an analyst of human nature. Someone who watched power move through people like electricity through hidden wires. On the other side of the table, you're not in Florence. You're not in the 1500s. You're in the present. Phone in your pocket, notifications tugging at your brain. But you're sitting across from him in a symbolic sense. You're here because, whether you know it or not, you've been feeling a pattern. Certain people can shift the mood of a room with a sentence. Some make you feel guilty without ever accusing you. Others get away with things you could never get away with. And somewhere in you, a quiet question has started to form. Why do they have this kind of pull, and I don't? Machiavelli would tell you something simple and uncomfortable. Because they understand your emotions better than you understand theirs. You like to believe you're rational. You make decisions logically, based on facts, evidence, and reason. But watch your own life carefully. You reply to messages faster if you feel anxious about losing someone. You say yes to favors when silence feels heavier than discomfort. You stay in conversations, jobs, or relationships that drain you because the fear of change is louder than the pain of staying. That's not logic. That's emotional control. Not the control you have over your emotions, but the control others gain over you through your emotions. Most people ignore this because it's insulting to the ego. No one likes to hear, "You're easier to manipulate than you think." So what do we do instead? We rename manipulation as persuasion. We call pressure expectation. We call guilt responsibility. We tell ourselves stories to stay comfortable. In the Camelot study, Machiavelli doesn't judge you for this. He doesn't care about your comfort. He cares about clarity. He would point out that humans, by nature, are predictable under pressure. That if someone knows which emotional button to press, fear, shame, validation, belonging, they don't need to be smarter than you, richer than you, or more educated than you. They just need to be more emotionally deliberate. You've met these people. The friend who always jokes, in ways that make you feel small, then says you're too sensitive if you confront them. The coworker who acts helpless until you step in, and then they become mysteriously competent again. The partner who pulls away emotionally, knowing you'll chase, apologize, and fix things even when they cause the problem. They are not always evil. Many of them are not even aware of what they're doing. But they've learned, consciously or not, the secret laws of emotional leverage. If I make you feel, I don't have to make you think. If I trigger your fear of loss, I don't have to explain. If I control what you're ashamed of, I control what you confess. The dark truth is this. Emotional control is traded like currency. In families, in friendships, in workplaces, in politics, in love. Parents use it to keep children obedient. Influencers use it to keep followers engaged. Leaders use it to keep groups aligned. Partners use it to keep each other close or trapped. And you? You often don't notice. Not because you're stupid, but because you've been taught to focus on what people say, not what they trigger. You listen to the reasons. You miss the emotional hooks. The world told you to watch arguments, evidence, explanations. It never told you to watch. The tightening in your chest when someone says, "I'm disappointed in you." The sinking in your stomach when someone threatens withdrawal or silence. The rush of relief when someone finally gives you approval you've been craving. Those sensations are not background noise. They are levers. Every time someone gets you to move, decide, or comply based on that internal storm, they are performing emotional control, whether they know the term dark psychology or not. Machiavelli, in his quiet way, would explain it this way. People wish to be free, but they are guided by what they fear and what they hope. The one who understands these currents does not need chains. You don't need chains to control someone whose self-image is on the line. You don't need force when belonging is at stake. You don't need threats when someone's need to be good can be turned against them. This is what most people ignore. You are not just influenced by arguments. You are influenced by the parts of yourself you refuse to look at. Your fear of being alone. Your need to be seen as kind. Your hunger to feel chosen, special, important. Anyone who learns to see these in you clearly has an advantage, an unfair one, if you remain unconscious. So here you sit at the symbolic table, across from Machiavelli's analytical gaze. He does not offer comfort. He offers a mirror. And the mirror shows you something unsettling. You were never just living your life. You were walking through a field of invisible strings, some pulled by strangers, some by people you love, some by systems so large you can't even see their faces. The secret laws of social influence are not hidden because they are complex. They are hidden because they are embarrassingly simple. People avoid pain. People chase validation. People fear exclusion. People repeat what gets them approval. You included. The question is no longer, are you being influenced? You are. The real question is, are you aware of which emotion they're using to move you, and why it works on you? Until you answer that, the laws of social influence will stay where they've always been, operating quietly, running in the background, used by those who understand them, against those who don't. And right now, whether you like it or not, you're still on the receiving end. You want to believe people are mysteries, complex, hard to read, hidden behind layers of personality and unpredictability. But Machiavelli would tell you the opposite as he slowly closes the old manuscript on the candlelit desk. People are not difficult to understand. They are difficult to admit. And this is where the second part of the truth begins. The mechanics of influence, the real machinery underneath every social interaction you've ever had. What you call vibes and intuition are actually patterns so ancient and consistent that once you see them, you can't unsee them. Let's start with the first mechanic. 1. People reveal themselves faster than you think. Watch someone's eyes when you first walk in. Watch how they breathe when uncomfortable. Watch what they do with their hands when they're unsure. Most people leak their internal world through microactions. The jaw tightening when they need control. The quick shoulder drop when they submit. The half-second smirk when they feel superior. The fake exhale they use to look calmer than they are. The stillness that isn't peace, but contained tension. These cues are not random. They're emotional fingerprints. And Machiavelli would remind you sharply. People announce their intentions long before they speak them. But you weren't trained to see this. You were trained to take words literally. You were trained to trust explanations instead of reactions. 2. There are only 3 social positions, and one happens instantly. Every time you enter a space, you fall into one of these. Above, you carry the energy of someone who doesn't need approval. Beside, you match the room, safe, neutral, unthreatening. Below, you seek acceptance before giving your presence. Most people live below without realizing it. You shrink yourself. You soften your voice. You apologize before there's anything to apologize for. These microgestures signal submission. And here's the dark part. People rarely check if you deserve that lower position. They accept it and treat you accordingly. Social influence often begins before a single word is spoken. 3. Emotional triggers are the real control points. Look closely at your own life. Who can make you angry fastest? Who can make you feel guilty with one sentence? Who can make you doubt yourself without evidence? Each of those people has emotional access, a backdoor into your internal system. Influence is less about persuasion and more about lever access. Validation lever. They give approval sparingly, making you chase it. Fear lever. They imply consequences, and your imagination does the rest. Shame lever. They make you justify yourself, even when you did nothing wrong. Belonging lever. They show subtle disappointment, and you panic about losing connection. Humans respond faster to emotion than thought. Faster to fear than reason. Faster to shame than evidence. This is why dark psychologists don't need force. They need access to your emotional shortcuts. Machiavelli would call these levers of obedience. 4. Social influence is built on 3 predictable human needs. Every person you meet, friend, stranger, leader, manipulator, runs on these 3 drives. 1. The need to be seen. Attention is oxygen for the ego. Take it away, and the ego suffocates. 2. The need to belong. Exclusion feels like psychological death. Most people will obey anything to avoid it. 3. The need to feel in control. Even powerless people create illusions of control to protect their identity. If someone can satisfy or threaten these needs, they can influence you. Not because you're weak, but because these drives are built into the human operating system. 5. Reading people isn't magic, it's pattern recognition. You don't have to read minds. You only have to read behavior. And behavior runs in cycles. When someone feels inferior, they minimize themselves. Small steps, tucked elbows, lowered head, quick nods. When someone feels superior, they expand space. Wider stance, relaxed shoulders, longer eye contact. When someone is hiding something, their body contradicts their words. Eye blocking, face touching, delayed reactions. When someone is manipulating, they create emotional imbalance first. Confusion, uncertainty, guilt, micro-disapproval. Once you know what each signal means, people become readable, painfully readable. And with reading comes influence. 6. Influence isn't about power, it's about perception. Here is where the deeper mechanics begin. Influence equals how they perceive themselves in relation to you. If they think you need them, they feel superior. If they think you fear losing them, they set the terms. If they think you can walk away, they become careful. If they think you know your value, they treat you differently. This is why emotional detachment looks powerful. It's not magic, it's scarcity. And the human brain worships scarcity. People want what is not chasing them. People value what values itself. People respect what doesn't negotiate its worth. 7. Machiavelli's most uncomfortable insight. In the candlelit room, he finally opens his mouth and says the blunt truth. If you do not understand people's fears, hopes, and illusions, then you do not live among humans. You live under them. He isn't insulting you. He's diagnosing you. Because whether you meant to or not, you've allowed others to shape your emotions. You've let their approval define your decisions. You've let their moods dictate your behavior. You've let social pressure override your internal compass. Someone taught you to be polite. No one taught you to be perceptive. Someone taught you to be kind. No one taught you to notice leverage. Someone taught you to avoid conflict. No one taught you the cost of avoiding it. And so, without realizing it, you have played the role others needed you to play. Influence isn't just what they do to you. It's what you fail to see about yourself. 8. The frame, the invisible container of every interaction. If you remember nothing else, remember this. The person who defines the emotional frame controls the dynamic. Speak calmly while they're emotional, you lead. Stay grounded while they pressure you, you lead. Stay silent while they over-explain, you lead. The frame is not dominance. The frame is psychological gravity. Everyone orbits around the person whose emotions are non-reactive. Machiavelli would call this the art of appearing unmoved while moving others. It is the purest form of power because it costs nothing, yet commands everything. And now the mechanics are on the table. You see the patterns. You see the levers. You see the frames. But seeing the code is not the same as awakening to it. You've spent most of your life reacting. Reacting to tone. Reacting to pressure. Reacting to guilt, silence, approval, rejection, expectation. You were moved by others, sometimes gently, sometimes violently, but always subtly. Now you've seen the machinery. Now you've seen the levers. Now you've seen how easily human behavior bends when emotion drives the steering wheel. But awakening begins here, not with more knowledge, but with a shift in identity. Because the truth is simple. Influence is never just what others do to you. It is what you unconsciously allow. And now, you're being asked to wake up from that sleep. 1. Awareness is the first break in the system. You can't be manipulated in the same way once you learn to notice the moment before you react. That moment, tiny, fragile, half a breath long, is where influence either succeeds or dies. The guilt they try to trigger? Stop and name it. The fear they're pressing? Identify it, don't obey it. The confusion they're creating? Call it out in your own mind. You cannot control emotion, but you can control ownership of it. Influence thrives on unconscious response. It collapses under conscious reflection. Machiavelli would tap the manuscript and whisper. The one who observes themselves becomes unpredictable to others. And unpredictability is the death of manipulation. 2. Detachment is not coldness, it's clarity. People misunderstand emotional detachment. They think it means apathy, cruelty, shutting down, becoming stone. It doesn't. It means you stop letting your inner world get hijacked by the outer one. It means, when someone is disappointed in you, you don't collapse. When someone demands urgency, you don't panic. When someone withholds affection, you don't chase. When someone raises their voice, you don't shrink. When someone pressures you, you don't rush. This is not coldness. It is self-possession, the ability to remain sovereign over your own emotional state. And people can feel it. Influencers feel it. Manipulators feel it. Predators feel it. Everyone who once relied on your emotional reactivity suddenly senses the shift. You stop being an easy target. You stop being predictable. You stop being lower. 3. Define the frame or lose the game. In social influence, the frame is everything. The person with the stronger frame sets the emotional tone, the pace of the conversation, the meaning of the silence, the weight of the words, the interpretation of the moment. The strongest frame is not aggression, it is calm certainty. Calmness is dominance. Stillness is direction. Non-reactivity is gravity. Machiavelli would tilt his head and say, "The one who remains still pulls the strings of those who move." You do not resist their energy. You let it break on the shore of your composure. People follow the one who is the least emotionally shaken. This is the quiet ruler of social dynamics. 4. See the illusions for what they are. Influence operates through illusions, not reality. Here are the biggest illusions you must burn. Illusion 1. People will like you if you're good. No. People like what is familiar, useful, or emotionally rewarding. Illusion 2. Honesty protects you. People weaponize what you reveal emotionally. Illusion 3. If I explain myself, they'll understand. Explanations rarely change emotional narratives. Illusion 4. If I avoid conflict, things will stay peaceful. Avoidance breeds silent resentment and silent power loss. Illusion 5. Kindness is enough. Kindness without boundaries becomes servitude. Influence breaks when illusions break. Once you see the spell stops working. 5. Shift from emotional reactivity, emotional intent. This is where the awakening becomes transformation. Instead of reacting to emotion, you begin using emotion, not to manipulate, not to deceive, but to guide dynamics consciously. You start to choose when to show warmth, when to show distance, when to be silent, when to speak slowly, when to look away, when to hold eye contact a second longer. You stop broadcasting your insecurity. You stop chasing validation. You stop explaining yourself in spaces where explanation is unnecessary. Your emotions stop being weapons others use on you, and start becoming tools you wield with awareness. 6. Power without violence. You don't need to dominate. You don't need to threaten. You don't need to win. Real social influence is subtle, nearly invisible. The way you pause before responding. The calm tone you use when others rise. The boundaries you hold without apology. The slower breathing that stabilizes the interaction. The way you don't reward pressure with compliance. You become someone others must adjust to. This is not brutality. This is presence. A presence that cannot be moved by every breeze of emotion around it. Machiavelli would look at you longer now, the candle flickering between you, and say, "Strength is not forcing others to bend. Strength is refusing to bend without reason." 7. The final law, self-definition, is the ultimate influence. Every interaction is a negotiation of identity. They try to define you. Annoying, weak, worthy, inferior, needed, disposable. They try to box you into a role. Helper, listener, fixer, servant. They try to make you responsible for how they feel. Awakening means reclaiming the pen. You define who you are, not them. You decide your value, not them. You choose your emotional pace, not them. You set the tone, not them. When people cannot define you, they cannot control you. And that is the core of social influence. Not domination, not manipulation, not fear. Identity. Once you become the author of your internal world, you become unreadable in the way manipulators depend on. You become untouchable in the emotional spaces they once invaded. You become sovereign. 8. The awakening moment. Imagine rising from the table. The manuscript stays closed. The candle burns low. Machiavelli doesn't smile, because awakening isn't something to congratulate. It's something to embody. As you stand, he offers a final line. When you know the laws, you are no longer a subject to them. You become a practitioner. You walk out not as someone who learned dark psychology, but as someone who is no longer asleep inside it. You are no longer the one being moved. You are no longer the one reacting. You are no longer the one being emotionally steered. You see the strings. You see the players. And more importantly, you see yourself. This is the awakening, the shift, the exit from unconscious influence. The secret laws are no longer being used against you. Now finally, they are simply visible. and visibility is freedom.